Hello and welcome to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. Tonight's topic is number 3 in our series of mystery disappearances in national parks and forests. I am your host Spooky, and here is your other most awesome host, Raven.
Hey.
Hey.
Yes, tonight is one of those reoccurring show topics we have.
Yeah, tonight's topic was requested by several viewers, and there was just so much to it that we're on number 3.
Yeah, this is definitely going to keep going on forever, just because this is actually a really tough one to do when we're doing all the research for it and everything, because you're reading case upon case upon case of someone's loved one where they have no idea what happened to them, where they're at, or anything. And, it's really, it blows your mind with all the different cases that I've read. There's into the hundreds just in national parks, forests, and everything else. But then when you see the ones where people are outside of that, and then cities and towns and everything, because you're literally going through it, it's quite alarming how many people disappear every single day,
I know it really is, and going through these cases, it breaks your heart. A lot of them do. It just breaks your heart, and you just cannot imagine what it would be like for your loved one to disappear, and you just do not know what happened to them. And also, it's overwhelming too, because you read through so many cases that sometimes it's just hard to pick out the ones that you want to do.
Well, you want to do them all, really.
Yeah, really, you want to do them all. Because you want to
bring justice. Hopefully, somebody who tunes in to tonight or hears it in the future may have some small tidbit of information that may bring these people closer to finding out what happened or anything, But I just want to say right before we start that I want to wish Doppel a happy birthday. He just had a birthday here recently.
Oh, really? Happy birthday, Doppel.
Yeah, and, he's helped mod for us for a long time, and it's been, tuning into the shows for years. So I just wanted to say a little happy birthday, and just hope you had a good one. But why don't you go ahead and do one of your cases first?
Okay. My first one is Stacy Ann Arras, Arras. She was a 14-year-old, 5'5", and about 120 pounds when she disappeared from the Sunrise High Sierra Camp in the Sunrise Meadows area of Yosemite National Park in California. This happened on July 25th, 1981. Now, she was on this 50-mile horseback riding trip with a group of about 8 or 9 other people, including her father, George.
Yeah.
Now, after riding for a few hours, they stopped at the camp, and they were going to freshen up, and they even planned to spend the night and then head out on the last leg of the trip in the morning, because mainly this was the last camp on the loop. It contained 9 cabins that could accommodate up to 34 people. Now, after showering and changing clothes, she decided to hike around the area and take some pictures. And she did ask her dad if he wanted to join her, but he declined, and their last conversation consisted of him telling her to change her footwear. She changed her clothes.
What was she wearing first?
Well, she changed her clothes, and the last time they saw her, she was wearing an off-white pullover windbreaker with a vertical zipper, a white jersey blouse, leggings, and gray hiking boots. But she started out wearing flip-flops. And her dad insisted that she put on hiking boots, which she did. She was seen walking to this boulder where one of the older members of the group, this Gerald Stewart, was sitting. And it was about 100 feet from the cabins. Now, she talked to Mr. Stewart and took some pictures, and then told Mr. Stewart that she was going to hike over to one of the 2 lakes and take some more pictures. Now, Mr. Stewart didn't know which lake, but he did get up and was seen walking a short distance with her, and then after this short distance, he was also seen, by other people in the group, sitting down on another boulder because he said he was too tired to, go on. This man was like 75, 76 years old.
So basically, for a while, they accompanied each other and were just kind of taking in the scenery and just doing a little hiking or whatever. And then he was taking short breaks and then would catch back up with her. But then, like you said, the second time he was sitting on a boulder telling her that he needed to take a break. I'm just kind of catching what you said because you're talking really fast. So.
Oh, sorry. Well, they were close enough to the camp that other people in the group, they observed her walking over to the boulder and talking to Mr. Stewart. Mm-hmm. And then they saw, them walk a short ways together and saw Mr. Stewart sit down. And they said, and Mr. Stewart also said that Stacy just continued on. There were 2 lakes in the area, and he was not real sure which one she was going to. Anyway, he said that he sat and watched her continue on in the direction of the lakes, and she went behind this tree and out of sight. Now, this was the last time anybody saw this girl. And this, and like I said, this was all collaborated by others who had seen her. Now, the lakes really were not far from the camp, and after a while, I think the farthest one was like 1.5 miles. And after a while, Mr. Stewart, he became really concerned when she didn't return because he figured she had enough time to go over there, and take some pictures, and she just did not come back. So he went down to the camp and he rounded up the group to go look for her, but they found nothing. He even asked these people who happened to be coming from the direction that Stacy had taken and asked if they had seen her, but nobody in that group saw anything of her. So they searched for a couple hours. Her father and Mr. Stewart finally called search and rescue. The only thing that they did find was the lens cap off her camera.
Wait, the family called the search and rescue, or they just contacted the DNR? Because wouldn't they have reached...
It said that they called in search and rescue.
Well, I would assume the family members probably went and talked to one of the DNR people who work in the area, whatever, and then they probably
park
started,
rangers, yeah.
And then they probably started
search and
rounding
rescue
in
were
search and
eventually
rescue.
called in.
Yeah.
And this became a huge search and rescue operation. I mean, there were like 150 people in this. And that included 67 members from the Mountain Rescue Association, sniffer dogs, and 3 helicopters. And what they did, the search was basically centered on a 3 to 5 mile square radius around each lake. And like I said, all they found was the lens cover from her camera, and it was just inside the tree line where she had, entered and disappeared.
Yeah, now, that's weird that... did they see... They didn't find no footprints or clothing, just her camera?
They found nothing, just this lens cover from her camera. After 10 days, the official search was called off, but a small group of like 35 volunteers, family and friends and a few strangers, they continued to search for a few more weeks. Mm-hmm. But by this time, they felt that it was more of a recovery than a rescue. And they found nothing. They found no clothes, no camera, no body, no skeleton. And they did...
Well, 10 days is kind of fast to find a skeleton remain.
Right. Well, it went on more than just the 10 days. Uh-huh. But the official search and rescue went on like 10 days. Mm-hmm. And they did feel, and this is a little gruesome, but they did feel she had metal braces on her teeth. And they felt that if they did find her body or some remains, that was probably how they would be able to identify her. Right.
Okay.
It's been like 37 years, and to this day, nothing has been found. And it was speculated that maybe she was abducted. And one of the reasons for that, actually one of the main reasons, was because they found absolutely no sign of any animal attack.
Right, no prints or anything.
Right, and given the route to the lakes, and like I said, the farthest being about a mile and a half, and there was a clear path to both, that they said it was very unlikely she would even become lost.
Unless she slipped and, well, like you said, she did change out of her flip-flops and put on boots. But it's, I mean, you can go a little bit in the woods and you can get disorientated, but if it was kind of more opening where she was at, she probably would have saw the clearing and could have made her way back.
Well, the whole thing was like a meadow. It was like an alpine meadow. Looking at the pictures, unless she went off the path, to me, this is my personal opinion, but unless she went off the path, it would kind of have been hard to get lost going to this lake. Either one of them, really. But, it's, like I said, this was just speculation on those people, some of those people. Some of them even speculated that maybe she just disappeared on purpose because, excuse me, there was talk of family problems and trouble at school.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be a place to run away from.
Exactly, and that's what I was thinking when I read that, because she's out in the middle of the wilderness. Yep. She has no supplies. She has nothing. The only thing she has is her camera.
And her clothes on her back, yeah.
And the clothes on her back, exactly. I mean, she had no supplies whatsoever. Who was going, where was she going to go? She obviously did not know the area. Now, and besides that, if she was in so much trouble, why would her dad take her on this trip?
Well, sometimes you go take somebody out of their environment to try to break a cycle, you know what I mean? And, have a one-on-one time with them, and maybe bonding may have helped whatever situation that may go on. I can see that kind of thing. But, in the area that she was at, how close were main roads to? How long would it take to get to a main road? Because she could have planned someone to meet her, or somebody could have been close enough to take her.
From the map, there really weren't any roads around there.
Okay.
We're talking about a horseback riding trip. They're not going to go along roads.
Miles and miles. Okay.
Miles and miles and miles of wilderness, But, like I said, I just don't believe, she was unprepared. She was in the middle of the wilderness and she had absolutely no supplies.
Yes.
And from all indications, she didn't know the area. Whatever happened to this girl, no one can really say for sure. Because like I said, there was absolutely nothing found.
Right.
It was like this girl just stepped off the face of the earth.
Right.
And
there is a link that we're going to put in reference tonight. It's a PDF from the MPS website, which they have photos that were taken during the search and rescue party that they had with all the volunteers of the area. You can see the lake, you can see what the camp looked like, the trails and stuff. They have tons of different photos of her. Also on that link is a bunch of newspaper clippings that you guys can read, and they also have their own memos of what they were discussing during this thing. There's some stuff that we're not allowed to share just because of copyright issues or whatever. We did reach out to the MPS and they told us what things we can share and what things we can't share or whatever. But it's definitely worth reading all the stuff that they have on there, because it just seems really strange to me. Plus, if, like you said, this campsite had it could hold up to 34 different people in one cabin, or there were 9 cabins, and all 9 cabins together, they had like bunk beds in them. They could hold up to 34 people. Once again, the last thing this girl was seen in, she was seen in an off-white pullover windbreaker with a vertical zipper, a white jersey blouse, leggings, gray hiking boots. She has metal braces, and she had a gold ankle bracelet around her
ankle. She's 5'5", 120 pounds, with blonde hair just past her shoulders, and she was carrying a small Olympus camera with this embroidered neck strap.
Yeah, but she was 14 at the time, and she was a very attractive young lady. And it makes me wonder if there was somebody else who possibly was staying in the area at the time that could have snatched her up, you know? And that's why...
Well, while they were searching, another group of people come up from a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
So there were people in the area.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like I said, you know, it was like this girl just stepped off the face of the earth. And she just became one more strange disappearance in one of our national parks.
Right. Well, the thing, in the area where she was at, there wasn't any really huge cliffs that she would have fell down into, is what you're saying. And
it was more of a meadow area.
Yeah. So,
and they're not, I don't think they're going to take, you know, on this particular, there's a map that I looked at.
Mm-hmm.
And the loop that they took, it was the shorter route. It was the shorter trip, because there was a longer one there, but they were on the short one. And I'm guessing, now I'm just guessing at this, but maybe the route they took were more for, like, you know, people who weren't really familiar with such long trips. And it just seems to me it would have been the easier route to take with a group like that, because it didn't say how experienced this Gerald Stewart was. You know, the main thing about him that they talked about was he was the oldest member of the group, and he was like 75, 76 years old.
Mm-hmm. I just have a weird feeling, like, you know, just because of how attractive she was, there could have been somebody in the area, you know, because she just went so quick. And I know this picture isn't exactly where she was at, but it's going in that direction, whatever. And the PDF link that we're going to share tonight at the end in references, you guys can really look and analyze and see all the different photos they took of the area, whatever. But to me, I just feel like somebody probably took her. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people, or like you said, that were out there during this time, and maybe somebody, you know, took her off into the woods. But it's weird that the dogs didn't pick up any of the scents, because you said they had trained dogs and they didn't.
I know that was an interesting little tidbit to me, that even dogs, they said absolutely nothing about dogs picking up her scent.
So they basically found her, which is weird because it's really tiny, a small camera cover. Because back then the cameras aren't, like, you know what I mean, as great as they are, you know, as the other years were going on. But I just find it strange that they found that, but nothing else. No footprints, no drag marks, no nothing. Because I know if an animal attacks, there would be some type of
there would definitely be a disturbance. There would definitely be an evidence of an animal attack. There would be blood. There would probably be ripped clothing. You know, maybe even if she might even have lost a shoe, who knows? But they didn't even find that. They just found nothing of this girl.
Man, I would be devastated if I was her father. I don't know how I would handle that.
Me neither.
Well, like I said in the references, we're going to post links so you guys can look at more photos of her and the area and everything else. And if there's anybody listening by chance tonight or in the future who has any type of information on any of these cases tonight, please reach out to the National Park Services and let them know, even if it's anonymous, you know, because there's people who are out there who are missing their loved ones and wanting them out there. I found another strange missing case when it comes to being with somebody, you know, except for you said that man and that woman that girl separated for a little bit, but she was with this person the whole time, you know, basically, and she just upped and vanished. Her name was Barbara Bolick. Anyway, this is one of those things, when I was reading about it, just made me wonder and think about a lot of different avenues or whatever, and I tried to find out more about Barbara before the day she went missing, but I couldn't really find out a whole lot, you know, kind of like where she worked, all that kind of stuff. She had kids and everything. But from what I did see, you know, she was born in August of 1951, and she met her second husband, Carl, in New Jersey. And he, at the time, he was an Air Force officer. And they ended up getting married, and they moved to Montana, and they lived in a few different places until they ended up purchasing this place in Corvallis. I think that's how you say it, Corvallis, Montana. And now, according to like different websites, you know, she really enjoyed life. She loved nature. She loved her friends. She loved biking. She liked hiking. You know, she loved entertaining her, you know, friends and family whenever they came to visit. You know, she just sounded like she was just a really awesome lady, you know, from what I was gathering from people who were who knew her and were talking on the internet. But it was said that she was kind of like an avid hiker, you know, and she knew the area of where, you know, of the different hiking trails and stuff in the section of where they lived. And she used to hit a lot of different trails many, many times. And one of her favorite spots to hike was the Bear Creek Trail near Victor, Montana. And she often went to this place a lot because it was one of her favorite places to go. And from what I was reading, like on different hiking sites and everything else, like people said that, you know, it's such a short hike, but when you get there, it's such an amazing view. It's almost like you hiked, you know, like all the way up to some really dangerous places just to see this type of view. But it's not. It's kind of an easier hike, but it's such a payoff to go to. So, you know, that's why she kept coming back to this place over and over again, because she just, you know, it was just one of her favorites, you know, and she knew it like the back of her hand. Well, in July of 2007, Carl, her husband, his cousin, and her friend, 58-year-old Jim Raymaker, they came visiting from California. And they were spending, you know, a few days or whatever with Barbara and Carl. And on Wednesday morning of July 18th, they were kind of having this discussion of, you know, maybe we should go hiking and stuff. And Bear Creek Trail was brought up between, you know, Barbara, Jim, and Carl's cousin. And for whatever reason, I never read anywhere her name. It's always just been mentioned as Carl's cousin. I mean, we know his name, but I just couldn't find anywhere what her name is. So I apologize. I'm just calling her Carl's cousin for now. But anyway, they were sitting around in the morning and talking about it and talking about, hey, let's go hiking. And of course, Carl's cousin, still feeling the effect from last night's drinking, declined that morning. So Jim and Barbara, they decided that, hey, we're still game. Let's go enjoy the morning hours up on the mountain trail and, you know, take in this awesome views and just enjoy nature. So it was said that Barbara basically packed a day pack with some snacks and water and her .357 handgun, because she brought that with her all the time, which you know, it's pretty smart. You're going out in the wilderness. You don't know what you're going to run into. You should always be prepared. Anyway, she walked in and she woke up Carl because he was still sleeping. And she just let him know, like, hey, me and Jim are going to head out to Bear Creek Trail Overlook and that we'll be back by the afternoon. Well, Carl, due to his health conditions from, you know, a previous heart attack, he no longer went on hikes with her. They used to go on hikes all the time and stuff, but that's why he wasn't participating that morning on the hike. So they basically said their goodbyes, and Carl said that he would have dinner ready for them when they returned. So Jim and Barbara headed out the door, I guess a little bit after 8:30ish, you know, between 8:30 and 9 a.m. or whatever, that July morning. Now, Bear Creek Overlook Trail is in the Bitterroot Mountains near Victor, and it's said to be like a 4.7 mile long trail. And it's kind of considered to be a moderate trail, but it has like all these different switchbacks that make it really easy. Or easier. I shouldn't say super easy, but a lot easier than some hikes that people will take. But from what the hikers were saying online, it's fairly easy. But the trail is surrounded by huge, tall pine, like long pole type pine trees, not where the branches come all the way down to the bottom, but they're, you know, just more really tall pine pole like trees. And when you get to the top, they say there's like these 3 rock outcrops where you can kind of like walk out onto, but you kind of have to be careful because of course there's like the sheer drop off. But there are photos of this area online, both of the trail and of the overlook, and I'll be posting a link for you guys in our references so you can get more views of the area of where she was at besides this. But we try not to use anything without permission or whatever. But there's also a photo of the road that leads to the trail. But from what I was reading online, the road that leads to the trail is also pretty much maintained as well. But Jim and Barbara, basically that day, when they arrived at the site, they ended up having to park like less than a mile downhill from the trailhead due to a road construction that was kind of going on, because the road leading all the way up to the trailhead was kind of being blocked because a Forest Service crew was going to be replacing a culvert in the area. So Jim and Barbara ended up leaving the rented SUV, you know, like I said, about a half a mile down from the trailhead, and they set off for the trail. Now, there were two men and their dog were also hiking that trail that morning. And both Jim and Barbara, you know, they crossed paths with these two guys, and they were, you know, exchanging pleasantries, you know, with the guys, and they were talking and whatever. And then both parties headed off in their own direction. And when Barbara and Jim, they reached the overlook, and they decided, like, hey, let's just take a break and just enjoy the view. So they sat down for a while, and they were snacking a bit. And I guess from what Jim was saying, they were there for about a half an hour or so. And that's when they decided, like, they should head back down and go back and see what Carl and, you know, Jim's girlfriend or whatever is doing or whatever. So before, they packed up their snacky stuff or whatever, and Barbara started to head back down the trail, and she wasn't even 20 to 30 feet away from Jim. And Jim's just like, you know, at the time, Jim was taking in the view one more time. He just paused because he wanted to look at everything before he started heading down. But Barbara kind of started off first before him. So that's why they were like 20 to 30 feet away, according to Jim. But anyway, when he turned around to join Barbara on the walk down, Jim said that she had just vanished. And from this point on, from what one can assume is from what, you read online of what he did next. I mean, I don't really know. We can kind of just surmise and just go off of the things that were kind of mentioned or whatever, but you don't truly know what he did. But the area that they were in is said to be somewhat kind of opened, and it's not like how the trail, when they first were coming up all the different switchbacks where it has all these long pine trees and lush green and stuff like that. When it starts to come up to the top more, it's hardly any trees, and there's a lot of loose shale rock. So he could kind of see where she was. She couldn't just hide behind a tree, be like, oh boo, you know what I mean, type of thing. And also he could hear Barbara walking away because of the loose rock. But he started heading down the trail looking for Barbara. Now, during that time, it was said on several sites that, the Forestry Service crew, they arrived that morning to work on the culvert. And those guys had mentioned when they arrived that they saw two vehicles parked at the edge of the road closure sign. One of them was a light-colored, older model Chevy S10 Blazer. And then, of course, the other vehicle was the rented SUV that Barbara and Jim had arrived in. Well, anyway, while these guys were working down at fixing the road section, the forest crew, they were those two younger men that I had talked about before with the black and white collie that Jim and Barbara ran into. Well, they came through the construction section where these guys were working, and they stopped and they started talking with those guys for a bit. And after a while, they just started walking off down towards the vehicle. Well, almost an hour later, Jim approached the forestry crew and asked them if they had seen a 5-foot-tall woman with, reddish-brown colored hair by the name of Barbara, which, according to the sites online and newspaper articles, they all said no, they hadn't seen her. So Jim walked back towards their vehicle in hopes of catching up to her, thinking maybe she's already back in the truck. And one of the crew forestry guys went with him. But when they got there, Barbara was not there. So, of course, concerned, I'm assuming, Jim had to back up the trail to find her. Now, another hour or so passed, and Jim came back to the crew guys again, panicked, asking if they could help assist him in locating Barbara because he could not find her. So on July 18th, sometime after 1 p.m., Carl's phone rang, that's Barbara's husband, And there on the other line was this forestry law officer asking, like, if he knew who Barbara was, whatever. And he's like, well, yeah. And then he was informing her that there was a report put in that she's actually missing. So Carl and his cousin hop in their vehicle, and they headed to Bear Creek Trail. And I guess from where they lived and to where the trailhead is, it's about 12 miles away. So that's like 30-some minutes of driving. I can only imagine the kinds of thoughts that were racing through their minds about, like, the what-ifs and what-nots, or what kind of scenarios going on. Like, what do you mean she's missing? You know what I mean?
Well, this trail, did this gym guy even look over the side to see if maybe she had fallen off the trail or something? You said there was shale rock there. That's got to be slippery.
Well, he was on the edge part, still looking over at the amazing view. When she's heading down, it's more of an openness, you know what I mean? And you're heading back, so she's not right on the cliff's edge or anything. Because he said that he could hear her walking. At what point? Are you sharpening your fingernails?
No. At one point, I wonder where he no longer heard her walking.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. He said it wasn't even a minute or so when he turned around, and she was just gone, you know? And so, of course, the reason why it took him a while, because it takes, the trail takes a while to walk up and walk back, because it's 4.7 miles. But he was looking for her, you know, and she couldn't have fell too far off, you know. But like I said,
and surely, as experienced as she was with the area, she wouldn't have just wandered off the trail.
Well, soon after, they had search teams up there, you know, arriving, obviously, and they brought with them search dogs, and they also one of the SAR people right away called in care flight chopper, you know, the hospital chopper, because they figured, well, she must have slipped off a cliff and was somewhere below. So they had the care flight chopper come in, and they were searching the areas just below the cliffs that afternoon. Well, day soon turned to night, and as more people arrived to kind of assist in the search, because you have the U.S. Forestry Service, you have the Ravalin County, Missoula search and rescue teams coming in, you know, like I said, day turned into night, and then night turned into day, and then days turned into weeks, and then months. And there was no sign of Barbara anywhere. Several different choppers were brought in. One was from the National Guard, another from like Homeland Security from Great Falls. You had the Life Flight, you had the Care Flight choppers. They were all helping in searching for her. And of course, you know, it wasn't just all air. They also had the ground search. They had cadaver dogs that were there. They were brought in. They had special search and rescue dogs that were trained for this kind of stuff in these different areas, who knew how to find people in mountainous stuff like this. You know what I mean? They were brought in to help locate her all during these weeks and days and months that were passing. And it was even mentioned that during the night searches that one of the choppers even had infrared camera, and that was being used as well, according to all the leaks I was reading anyway. And of course, we put all this stuff in references so that you guys can see what we were reading too. There was a reward of $10,000 that was offered for any, you know, information leading to Barbara's return, or for any information leading to any arrest or, you know, conviction of a person or whatever, people responsible for her disappearance. Now, the article of Barbara's disappearance, you know, it was run in tons of newspapers. It was on the TV news. The Carl and the family and friends and stuff, they were printing out flyers and handing them out through tons of different towns and communities. You know, they were asking for anybody who knew who these two men, you know, were, or because they put a description and did a little sketching that was being passed out there or shown on the news, and they were, and they weren't saying that these guys were, how do I say this, being looked at like suspiciously. They just wanted to
Suspects.
they just wanted to find out who they were, have them come forward, you know, reach out to them or anyone who might know these guys so they can help maybe share whatever information they know or remember of what happened that day, to see what maybe possibly happened to Barbara. Sorry, I was trying to see if somebody's asking a question in chat. But this description and the sketch that was shown on the news of these guys, they were in their 20s. One of them was like more of a darker skin with black hair. The other one was kind of like a medium complexion with reddish hair. They were both very clean cut. They had athletic build, and they drove a light colored, like I said, Chevy S10 Blazer. They had some type of black mixed breed collie, had black with some white markings on it, and they said it had floppy ears or whatever. And like I said, they weren't being looked at as suspects, but they're just hoping that they would come forward and help give any information possible that could help bring Barbara home. But, I did come across this one site, which I will put in the list of our references, where in the comments section, some of her family was actually posting, as well as someone who said they were a part of the SAR team that was looking for Barbara actually the very first day. And they had mentioned that they had helped. I can't confirm if they were really part of the SAR team. I mean, I'm only going off of what these people are saying. But they had mentioned that they had actually helped search for her for several months and was up on the mountains in the area several times with the SRA on their own, with their friends, trying to find Barbara. And they even went up there with a private investigator that Carl actually hired to help find his wife. Now, this person alluded that the sheriff at the time had demanded that they stop searching for Barbara and that things could have been handled better. Like more efforts stepped up in the first few days. There was actually leads that weren't followed up on, and that the sheriff had actually refused to take phone calls from Carl or her family at one point after time had passed. And true or not, I don't know, but they were saying, like, it had to do with some type of ego thing, like don't step over your command, you know what I mean, type of thing. But
I was going to say, that's very strange that the sheriff got to the point where he was ordering them to stop looking for him and wouldn't even take phone calls from them.
Well, right, but the thing is, this person was talking about how they couldn't go into too far much detail because it is still kind of an open investigation, so they can't tell everything they know, but there was a lot of stuff that was being brought up and pointed out and things. And sure or not, I can't say. But I will post links so you guys can go read more of all the comments from her family and from this person. But it was said that there was actually it's actually below like an article, and then there's the comment section, and it's just filled with, even her ex-husband was talking on there too, not Carl, but her first husband. But it was said that there was actually 2 trails there. One that they took up originally that leads you back to their car. And then another one that kind of leads down into like this drainage area where another trail from there will lead you to a road. Now it was said on the site that Barbara, Jim, and Carl's cousin, because I don't know her name, sorry. They had actually been up in that area hiking a day or so before on the other trail. But the trails are, they're well marked once you're on them. Now, of course, there are several theories and opinions when it comes to the disappearance of Barbara. Some people believe that while she was hiking back down the trail, that she may have got hurt and then got confused and then took the other trail, or possibly that she slipped off the cliff, one of the cliff edges, you know what I mean? Like you had mentioned. Other people online think that maybe Jim hurt her or possibly killed her, since he was the last one to see her alive, or supposedly was the last one to see her alive. But the law, they talked to Jim a lot. And even after him and Carl's cousin, the lady, they went back to California. He's still very cooperative with them. He's not a suspect in her case. They don't believe at this time he did anything, simply because there's no evidence that points to foul play, and one of the guys, Johnson, I think he was one of the officials who worked on this search and cases and stuff. I think on the net, he said that until she can be located or her body, basically Jim is just a witness in their eyes. But why would he want to harm Barbara? What would he gain from it? That would be because as far as Jim, as far as I was reading about Jim, he didn't know Barbara that well, and he was only dating Carl's cousin, and the reason why they were visiting were just to visit Carl. I mean, he didn't even really know her. So why would he, have this all planned out and not even really knowing the area, or you know what I mean? And I think I located his Facebook page and other stuff, and because he's got tons of him hiking in all these different places or whatever, and from everything that people are talking about him, everything about this one guy, it doesn't look like he comes off like a killer, you know? Are you still there, or did Skype kick you off?
No, I'm still here.
But what were you going to say?
I forgot. Well, that would have been my first question. Why would he harm Barbara? I mean, what? He didn't know her, okay? That's probably, maybe the first time that he'd seen her, maybe the second. Why would he come all the way from California just to do that?
Yeah, and it doesn't look...
And how would he know that Carl wouldn't be going with them?
Well, obviously they were there for days or whatever, and they'd been hiking in the area in a previous spot before or whatever. But people are speculating, like, maybe he might have heard her, maybe, you know... I still get
the feeling that she fell over the side of the mountain because, I mean, shell rock it's very, very thin, okay? And I've walked on it before. When you walk on it, it tends to move. And not always, but it has a tendency to, you know, move a little as you step on it. And I'm just wondering if maybe she stepped down on some that just kind of moved a little bit more than she was expecting,
but he would have heard her
and fell over.
He would have heard her scream.
Well, it seems to me too that she would have screamed or something going over the side.
He would have heard her too, but also when you guys look at the photos in the link when I share the rest, because all the other photos that show the trails and everything else are, you know, copyrighted. There's not given permission to use, but we can give you the link to look at it. It's not a trail full of that rock. It's like a dirt path. Well, you know how like a deer will travel over. I don't know how many people have been in nature who are listening, but if you keep going over the same path, you wear it down and make a nice trail, right?
Right.
It's a very easy switchback trail. A lot of people could take it, but a lot of people are speculating like maybe Jim did. They were thinking or whatever, but Jim didn't even hardly know her, and then like, well, maybe he tried sexually advancement to her, it didn't work out, he freaked out. I don't know. I'm not saying this is my theory, I believe this is what people are talking about, but people online have also tried to speculate that Barbara never reached that trail that day, and that she was actually harmed somewhere else by Carl, and that the other two helped cover it up, which I highly doubt. And I really don't believe... I don't
see that happening.
I really don't believe that three people, one of which not even knowing her that well, would put himself into that situation like that. Nor would Carl want to have two other people that could, you know, rat him out, you know. And it's not, and it's not for the money either, because from what I was reading online, Carl actually had a really comfortable retirement fund from the Air Force and everything else, and worked with some kind of banking stuff. So it's not like they needed the money. And I think that while searching for Barbara, they would have brought, you know, because they brought in those dogs, you know, all over the mountain stuff. I'm assuming everybody who was helping up on the mountain, they probably went down to her residence as well, and they were talking to the people there at the residence. I'm sure at the time, you know, they were probably looking around the residence for anything for foul play or to find anything there too. They're not going to just focus on the mountain. The cops are going to come to the residence as well, you know. So I'm sure if she was harmed there, the dogs or whoever would have found something too. But, you know, the trail set, like I said before, was a 4.7 mile round trip. Now, some people mentioned that it would take, when I was reading other hikers, they said it could take them anywhere from 1 hour to 3 hours to do that trail, depending on the person doing the hike, you know, and the rate of speed and their physical condition, obviously, and the weather, okay? But I read also on some hiking forums that people who have taken this hike said that they have actually come across bear prints on the trail. And on one of the Google Maps photos that I was looking at, there was a sign posted on July 2nd of 2016 that there was actually a mountain lion that had been seen in the area. And they were actually warning hikers to be cautious, you know, especially people who have dogs and small children. And if they saw, you know, anything, you saw an animal, whatever, to call the game warden. So there are predators in that area that is known to people. So it is possible that an animal could have got her. But for it to leave behind no evidence of her, no drag trail, no blood, none of her clothing item anywhere. I mean, she was carrying a gun. I think if she was actually confronted by a bear, both the bear and she would have made noises that Jim would have heard and seen the attack happening, being that if she was only 20 to 30 feet away from him, you know, from according to everything that's going on the net. Now, she could have gotten her gun out on time to fire off a warning shot if it was a bear or whatever, you know. But if she was stalked by a cougar, I mean, she could have been taken down by surprise because they're very stealthy. Everybody knows cats are stealthy. And they go for the neck. But the fact that Jim was so close, there would have been some sound that he would have heard or a sign of struggle to some degree.
You would think.
But not just Jim, you know, but also the trained people who came in searching for her as well as the dogs. They would have picked up on her scent, which was said on the site that they didn't pick up on her scent, which I think is really weird because they should have hit on something, especially if they were hiking in that, you know, in that area a day or so before on the other trail, you know. So unless there was super extreme weather that happened that could have washed away her scent, but her scent should have been hit on. But the SAR person that was posting on the comment section that I was talking about a little bit before, they said that the weather conditions there were like around 100°F, and there was smoky air from forest fires and, you know, other issues, which could, you know, affect some of the dog teams depending on how highly well they were trained. And, you know, it could affect them from being able to pick up her live scent, you know. But you also have cadaver dogs. They would have picked up on a dead body eventually. But others say that, you know, maybe she walked off, you know, like when Jim was looking away the other way, maybe she took a different trail or, you know, went off a ways because she left Carl and wanted to start a whole new life. Which from I was reading, she took nothing with her. She didn't have her ID. She didn't have her passport. She didn't have her wallet. She didn't have her phone. She didn't have change of clothing or anything. And Carl said that they had pets and that she adored her pets. And she would never leave them behind, ever. And even if she did flee her marriage, I'm sure she would have kept in contact with her closest friends and her family that she loved. I don't think she just chose to walk away, you know? And, you know, someone said, you know, maybe someone took her or something took her. You know, there have been other women in the area that were taken and killed. That was a weird action that came out of my mouth. But that's why maybe no one found any trace of her, because there was already somebody up there and took her. I mean, there were already those other guys hiking, but there was a serial killer back during these years in 2007 and a few other years where he was going purposely to different national state parks and forests and mountainsides and stuff and was killing people. And people thought, well, maybe he might have ran into Barbara because she was a short woman and only 100 and some pounds, I forgot how much she weighed, 110, 115 pounds or whatever. You know, so she was a little petite person. Somebody could have, swooped her up real quick. But Jim was so close, you know. But maybe, you know, maybe he was looking at the mountainside a little bit longer than he thought he was. And maybe she got a little farther than what he thought she did. You know what I mean? But Barbara's case reminds me of some other ones that we've read or did on shows before. You know, where they had people not far from them and poof, they were gone. You know, without a sign, without a sound, no struggle. Remember the one I just did before about Bobby Pankin? That little boy?
You're right.
When he was with his mother and his brothers, they weren't only a few feet away. And he just, like that, and they were on a forestry road. And what about the case about, remember Thelma Pauline? You know, she was hiking on a trail with her two friends in the Great Smoky Mountains on another popular trail. And she just started to walk ahead of her friends, and she wasn't even like 75 yards away from them. And she walked up over like a small crest of a hill on the trail. And she was only out of their view for like a few minutes. And when they reached it, she was gone. Poof, like that. And nobody found her either. Their dogs couldn't trace any of these people either. And they were used in all those cases too. So, I don't know. You know, just because there are dogs, it doesn't mean the ones that are used all the time are trained right for that search, or maybe both the dog and their handlers were not given a proper scent to track these people. Or maybe something in the environment could play a factor that threw them off. You know, there's just so many things that can happen.
There are a lot of people on those trails too. Maybe the dogs just couldn't pick up the right scent.
Right, and maybe they weren't given the right thing to help get enough scent of these people, you know. And there are actually a few, we did on previous shows where people, like I said, they just poof were gone. But, you know, obviously something happened to Barbara. You know, some people say she met with foul play. Others say she fell and got hurt. But if she fell and got hurt, they would have found her body, because from what people were saying, it's pretty clear area that when they would see the body below laying on the rocks. Okay? So it's not like it would have been covered up or she fell into like a weird crevice type of thing or whatever. They're saying that this section of where she was at, it's pretty easy to find her if she fell off. You know, others say an animal got to her. You know, I just, nobody really knows. We don't know. Until Barbara is located, living or deceased, people are always going to speculate to different thoughts or theories, you know, when it comes to her disappearance. But if there is anyone listening to the show tonight or later on into the future, you know, on this podcast, if you think you might have any information pertaining to this case, you can contact the Ravalli County Sheriff's Office. But Barbara was a white female. She was 5 feet tall. Like I said, I think she was like 115 pounds when she disappeared. Now, she had like a brownish reddish hair. She had brown eyes and was last seen wearing a tan shorts, a pastel colored shirt. And she was also carrying a black day pack with a .357 handgun. Now, she does wear eyeglasses at times, and her ears are pierced. Now, at the time that she disappeared, she was 55 years old, and I think that would make her 66 today. But the thing is, like, let's say somebody took her or whatever, if they have her registry of her handgun out there, that it could get flagged if it's ever found or used, you know? So if the gun is ever found or used...
I can't understand why the gun was in the backpack and she wasn't wearing it.
Well, I think it was like I don't know, like, per se what the backpack was. Like, it was a front pack that you could hold and just pull out, you know, like people have fanny packs or whatever. I don't 100% know what the backpack looked like. But I know if they ever did find her gun, then she's not lost out on the mountain, or somebody did interfere with her in order to get her gun. But they were saying that anywhere on the sides of the cliffs, they would have been able to find her. And maybe if she did go take the second trail, the SAR person that was commenting saying that that area wasn't really searched that well. But obviously people had continued to keep searching on their own, and they still look out for her, because there's other people who go hiking up there and they do keep their eye out. There was some bones found, but they weren't of her. They were a male that ended up being found. But I do know that during those years, there was a serial killer going to different areas, killing people, specifically stalking and hunting people in the national forest. But she had to have been a little farther from Jim than what he is saying, you know, for her to quickly poof like that. Or maybe not. I just don't know. She knew the trail.
She knew the trail, so it really wouldn't be unthinkable that she would be further down that trail than what he thought she was. And you said there were switchbacks, you know. She could have been around 2, maybe even 3 corners there, you know, way further ahead of him than what he thought.
Mm-hmm. Something could have got her in the woods, you know, for sure. Person or animal.
Well, if she was far enough ahead of him, if an animal got a hold of her, I don't see how Jim would have heard it.
It's just, you know, like there's a lot of these things tonight that we're talking about, and the ones we've talked about previously, where it's just, they're gone. And it doesn't make sense. You haven't found anything, just like that little girl that you talked about earlier. They could find a tiny camera lens, but they couldn't find a trace of her or footprints or anything. It's just so weird. And it's awful. And we're hoping by doing these shows, you know, it keeps it in circulation that maybe somebody somewhere, because if somebody did something, somebody always talks eventually, you know? But I think the guy who was the serial killer, I think he only admitted to enough and then ended up killing himself, or something happened where we'll never know how many people he really did end up killing. I can't remember. I'll have to, when I find out what it was again, I'll put the link in references so you guys can read about him. But he was stalking many national parks and forests, and a lot of people who disappeared was because of him. But it's hard to say. And with the pictures, when you guys go look at the pictures later of all these trails that she walked up to get to this overlook point, he would have found her. He should have been able to find her, especially after the different seasons when the foliage changed and everything else. Should have been easier to spot, especially since she was wearing a pastel colored shirt. But maybe she took the wrong, I just don't think she would have taken the wrong trail down and got lost, because this was one of her favorite spots. She was an avid hiker. She hiked in tons of these places. So this one is just another one that there's just so many unanswered questions, and she had somebody with her right there, not even, a few moments away from her. I don't know. Do you want to take a quick break before we go into all the other ones that we have?
Okay.
Yeah, we got tons of more cases to talk about tonight. But if anybody knows any information, please, go ahead and contact, the county sheriff office numbers and stuff we have up here. You don't even have to see your name. You can even do it anonymous and stuff. But we're going to take a quick break. I need some water, and we have a lot more to talk about. So stick with us. And thank you for sharing us with others. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Anything But Ordinary with Spooky and Raven. I'm Raven. Tonight's topic is mysterious disappearances in national state parks and forests. This is part 3 of a series that we have. Hopefully Spooky's back with us.
Oh, yeah.
There was a question asking her about Barbara if she had a gun on her, if an animal attacked her. Don't you think she would have taken it out in time? And sometimes it's easier said than done, because if something comes out and like you cross paths, like last time, last couple shows, if you guys were listening, I talked about when I was berry picking and had an encounter with the timber wolf that was only a couple 100 feet away from me. Like I told you, there was really not fast enough time for me to get my .38 out of my holster, and my natural reaction was to jump up and holler to scare the thing off, right? So,
and she had her gun in a pack.
In a backpack or a bag of some sort, so you'd have to unzip it. So I don't think it would be as quick as she could to get it out, and especially if a large predator had got her. But I still think that Jim would have seen and or heard something, let alone the search teams would have discovered droplets of blood or anything. The dogs, something would have hit on something. And some people think like that's why she probably never even made it up on the trail. But she did make it on the, that's the reason why they wanted to locate these two men too, to prove that, Jim and her were really up there. It wasn't just Jim. Because the Forestry Service guys, all these people had already got up the mountain by the time they arrived at work. Which, it would have been interesting to know what time those guys actually got there. Yeah. Versus what time Jim and Barbara and the other two young men were there. But, I'm sure they weren't the only ones up there on the mountain. There are people who are known to live in the mountainside. There are people who've come down and kidnapped people and brought them back to their section and kept them as their whatever, you know what I mean? So it's hard to say, and sometimes, in a situation, even though you may have something on you that may protect you, with how fast the moment might happen, you may not react in the appropriate manner to even use your weapon, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know. Irregardless, it's horrible whatever happened. Hopefully something somewhere, sometime, will show these people where these two cases, these two women are, just to bring closure to the family or whatever. But do you want to go ahead and do your next one?
Yeah, thank you. My next one is on Derek Joseph Leuking, Leuking. Now, when 24-year-old Derek failed to show up for work one day in March of 2012, his family and friends tried calling him on his cell phone, but there was no answer. About 2 days later, though, they learned that he had checked out of his hotel at the Microtel Inn and Suites in Cherokee, North Carolina, and this was on March 17th. This was near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Now, surveillance camera footage of him wearing a backpack proved this. Friends and family went looking for him, and by chance, they found his car in a nature area called Newfound Gap. Now, inside the car, they found this newly purchased camping gear. He had like a pickaxe, a compass, a pocket knife, a knife sharpener, a tent, a sleeping bag, about 100 feet of parachute cord, granola bars. There was a survival belt containing a multi-tool, a flashlight, and a fire starting rod. Now, they also found these pages from a survival manual, and they also found Derek's wallet and some cash. Now, even though he was well prepared for being in the wilderness, he didn't take any of this gear with him. It was in his car. And they also found something else in his car. They found this note that said, "Don't try to follow me." Now, authorities launched an intensive search, and they interviewed campers and hikers that they came across, and asking them that if they had seen Derek, but nobody had. They felt this was strange because it was this clear and sunny Saturday, and the area was just full of people who were engaged in all sorts of outdoor activities. Now, this made the authorities speculate that maybe he had gone off the trail and gotten lost. They couldn't figure out why he would have gone off the trail, though, because it led into a very thick wilderness, and he had not taken his equipment with him. And so, because of this, they worried about his chance of survival. And they also wondered why, if he had made these preparations to go into the wilderness, why didn't he follow through with it? And leave all of his gear behind, or why he had even gone into the park to begin with. Some speculated, though, that he, because of the note, that he had gone to commit suicide, but his family said that he wasn't suicidal.
It didn't look like it to me when I was looking at their Facebook pages and everything else. He looked like a really happy guy and knew a lot of stuff. Well,
they think that something happened to him and somebody put that note in his car to throw the authorities off.
Yeah, like between there and here, he ran into somebody.
Right.
Because he had all his stuff,
Well, his family claimed that he was a huge fan of the show Man vs. Wild, which is hosted by Bear Grylls. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have seen at least one episode of this. And what it is, it's a show about a man who is dropped off into the wilderness all by himself. And he has very little gear to no gear. Mm-hmm. And he must find his way back using his wits and surviving off the land. And this is what his family really thought, speculated that what he was doing.
Well, you don't know for sure. That's what sites were saying. We don't know for sure if that's what his family thought or if that's just what people speculated.
It was just what his family thought, and they also said that,
according to sites you were reading anyway, we don't know for a fact.
Right, according to the sites I was reading. None of this I know personally. So authorities, kind of speculated that, if he was trying to imitate Bear Grylls, that could have been the reason why he left all of his new equipment in the car. Mm-hmm. And, just to make things more challenging. But according to his family, Derek wasn't even experienced with the outdoors, and the family, from what I read, speculated that if this is what he did, he possibly could have perished. The family also stated that it was the 1-year anniversary of the death of his grandfather, and Derek was very, very close to him. I really didn't see what this had to do with it, but it was, something that the family brought up. And some thought that maybe he went off with the intention of coming back, or with no intention of coming back. I'm sorry. I personally have a problem with this one, because if he was going to commit suicide, then why buy all of that survival equipment?
I think he ran into somebody. I really do. I have a feeling that he either helped somebody out and shouldn't have picked somebody up he wasn't supposed to pick up, or he ended up parking at a place, because they said they found his vehicle in the New Gap Found area. Mm-hmm. Who knows who was around in that area at the time, and maybe he just
he was in the parking area of this place.
Oh, so there are photos of that, actually. So I can put in, I think I have it in some of the links then, because I was looking at all these different photos of the New Gap Found area, and it's a very paved parking lot area.
Right.
But there's a lot of people who come there. So he could have ran into anybody, and maybe they went for a little walk together, or he went for a walk and came across somebody, and that's why his gear was still on his vehicle. I mean, it's hard to say.
It's just hard to say. One theory, though, is that he parked his car and he went to scout out the trail, and he was going to come back for his gear.
Right, so he didn't have to carry it all on his back. They thought that,
right, so, because he may have decided not to take that particular trail. Mm-hmm. And in the process of this, he either got lost or he was attacked by a wild animal. And this is another thing where they found nothing. I mean, the only thing they found was his car and this note. And some, like I said, they speculated that he may have been kidnapped, and the note was left to throw authorities off the track. Mm-hmm. But whatever happened to him, he still, to this day, is missing.
Well, they're still they're still searching for him. They have
they're still searching for him.
Facebook page up, called Find Derek Leuking, or how to say his last name. I apologize for saying that wrong, if I did. But I mean, they're actively still, searching and looking and seeking leads or whatever else,
Well, they say the last time he was seen, which was on the video footage, he was wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt, dark colored track pants with white stripes down each leg, dark blue sneakers, and he was carrying either a dark blue or a black book bag, and he may be wearing a waterproof watch. Now, Derek is 5'10" to 6 feet tall, around 215 pounds. He has brown hair, hazel eyes. He has a tattoo of these Japanese characters on his chest that mean live or life. And he's known to have a beard at times. He had, they said, like a half-an-inch beard at the time of his disappearance.
Right. I just have a feeling like he ran across someone, because from reading the different things that I saw on the internet and everything else, I just don't think that he went to go harm himself. I really don't think he planned on harming himself, and I really don't think he planned on disappearing forever.
Chances are he may not even have been the one that parked his car in that parking lot.
That's true, too. And I think, because you said there was ground and air search done, and they brought dogs in, too, for this.
Right,
case? And they didn't hit on anything as well?
They didn't hit on anything in this area. And, I mean...
So maybe he never even made it to the park.
I find it strange that they take these dogs out there, and the dogs don't pick up on anything. But like I said, this may not even have been the area where he disappeared.
Right.
Somebody else could have parked his car there.
Exactly. And that's why all his stuff was left there or whatever. He could have run into somebody from there to here.
It just doesn't make sense. He spent hundreds of dollars on this equipment. Mm-hmm. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars on this equipment, and just left it in his car. Yeah. I think, my personal opinion, he ran into someone, and I just somehow believe that this was not the area where he ran into them. I don't think this is the area where he disappeared. I think his car was left in that parking lot by someone else.
Well, the area with the parking area where this section is, and it's pretty well paved. A lot of people come. There's this this thing made where people take pictures of, and the sign between Tennessee and
it's right there on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina.
Right. I was trying to see what the picture was. Yeah, I don't have the other pictures up, but it's a lot of people come there. It's kind of paved. There's a sidewalk a little bit before you go off down the trails and everything else. There's a lot of people there. I would think somebody somewhere saw something if he ever made it to that point, because we all don't know, you know what I mean, exactly what happened. They just know they found his stuff there or whatever. But I would think somebody would remember seeing him, or maybe they even have him in a photo, because everybody's taking photographs while people are walking all over around there.
Ghost Call Radio made the statement, actually asked the question, could he have picked up a hitchhiker that killed him? I think it's possible.
I mean, it's always plausible. But we just don't know, because
anything is possible, really. And if he did go and commit suicide, like NJ Art says, surely a body would have been found somewhere.
Well,
if that was the area he went to. I just get this feeling, reading this, I just kept getting this feeling this was not where he got out of his car and went and checked out the trail.
But that's where his car ended up. That's
where his car ended up.
I just hope, there's just so many people that come during these seasons that you'd think somebody would have saw something.
There were a lot of people.
He may have been in a photograph. And I would hope, if somebody listens to this later, they would possibly, reach out. Because they can, contact, Derek's family's Facebook page, find Derek Leuking, and even just send a message or anything. But if the area that you're talking about, I saw the photos, and it's very active there. Somebody had to have seen something.
According to what I read, they said that there were a lot of people out that day. There, it was a nice sunny day, and that there were just, lots of people out there. I just find it strange that if there were quite a number of people there that nobody saw this man.
Yeah. It's another
and
one
if
of those.
he was attacked by a wild animal in this area, there would have been some sort of evidence left behind.
Well, don't they have black bears there?
Oh yeah, in the Great Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
Sure do.
But I don't think they have cats or wolves. Don't they just have like bears?
I don't think they have wolves, but they got cats in there.
Oh, you do? They do? I can't remember.
There are cats in just about every state.
Yeah, I guess they always.
I'm not sure about Hawaii though, but.
Well, they always say like cougar's not, or cougar can't be there, or this can't be there, but then people have evidence that they are. But I don't know. This one's just another really hard one, and hopefully by circulating this information out there, somebody somewhere, might recognize something or look through their photos and be like, yeah, I was there around that time, and maybe look through your photos and see if you see somebody who it resembles.
Yeah, that's an idea right there, because people are always, they go to these places, are always snapping pictures. Always.
Right. So if
their
anybody
kid
listens who might have been there at the time.
They'll snap a picture of it. But it's like I said, I just don't think this is the area where he went. I just don't.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I just know, all they know is they know he left from that hotel section.
Right.
And they know where they found his car and his gear, and that there was a small note that said, don't follow me. But they don't know for sure if he wrote it or what. I mean, they don't really know.
They don't really know.
They know from here to there, something happened.
Right.
Somebody was mentioning that, Jason was mentioning, like, they also grow illegal weed operations out in those woods, which they do, yeah.
He's right, they do.
He could have ran across a grow spot and got taken out.
There are a lot of...
happens in all those mountains, yeah.
There are a lot of hillbillies and rednecks out that way.
Well, you don't have to... It's not just the hillbillies and rednecks, There's people who come
well, I know
there
there are mountain people. There are people that live in those mountains. People don't realize it, but there are people that live in those mountains. And some of them do grow weed out there. That's how they supplement their income, growing weed, running moonshine, things like that. You don't know if he stumbled upon something, which I highly doubt it, but, Jason has a very good point there. Who knows if he ran across something that he shouldn't have, and was taken out, for it. It's even inside the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. There are people that live on the edge of it. There are some people that live just inside of it. You don't know what's going on out there.
There was somebody, and I'm not saying this Derek, but there was, I can't remember where I watched it. Could have been Unsolved Mysteries for all I know. When you watch old stuff on MeTV or whatever and all these different channels. But there was this episode of this guy who got hurt. Well, there's actually a few people who ended up getting hurt or had some kind of health condition that happened real quickly. But they ended up losing their memory. Didn't know who they were. Ended up states away, living for years, and never even knowing that they were this person, and until I can't remember, something happened. There was people looking for them, missing posters and stuff, and then this one person ended up finding out who he was and went back to his family. Well, of course they ended up divorcing because he just wasn't the same person anymore. But maybe Derek got hurt too and doesn't know who he is, and he could be alive somewhere in a different state.
That's entirely possible, but, there may be cases of that with some of these, but, there are far too many people missing in these national parks and forests.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying there's so many
for it to
possibilities.
Just be a coincidence.
Oh, I know, but there's so many possibilities.
And I'm sure some of the missing are from wandering off the trails and getting lost. Mm-hmm. Or falling over the side of a cliff.
Succumbing to the weather elements.
So yeah, succumbing to the elements.
But then there's other things where they're just poof gone, But usually, you'll find something of them, some type of remnants of the person at some point at some time. But like we said, if there's anybody. well, let me finish. If there's anybody at all who was there on that time and has photos, go through your photographs and see if possibly you may have. Because even if they have proof that he was there, that still helps them pinpoint a section to keep looking around.
Well, they had proof that he was at least at that
motel. Yeah.
That's it. You know, and I want to say I wasn't insulting hillbillies and rednecks because I come from a long line of hillbillies and rednecks. So, but, you know, I mean, I am familiar.
She wasn't knocking them. She
some
was
of the operations of these
that.
hill people.
Yeah. She wasn't, we're not, she doesn't, Spooky doesn't.
No, I'm not.
She's from the South. Spooky's from the South and knows all about that stuff. But the thing is, it's just, you never know what you can come across when you're out in the woods anyway. He could have ran into something, an animal or anything. But, you know, if anybody, like I said, if they could actually have a photograph, and he's in one of their photographs that proves that he was actually there, that would help the family know to keep searching in that area. At least they know he made it there.
Well, adorable. Go ahead.
Because you had mentioned that maybe he never even made it there and somebody dropped off his car. But if somebody actually has proof that he had actually made it there, that at least they can keep knowing that he's somewhere in that area.
Yeah. Maybe. Adorable made the statement. She says sometimes people just want to escape their lives and go missing on purpose, although it's such a cruel thing to let their loved ones worry. That's very, very true.
Some people do.
I really don't think that's the case with this guy, though, because if he was going to do that, all of that equipment wouldn't have been in his car.
Yeah, he would have took it with him. I would have, more than likely. Well,
because they just it was somewhere down south, and I can't remember where it was, where this guy had been missing like 27 years, and they found him living off the land. You know, people would find things missing, like eggs would be missing, or a couple chickens or something, you know, or you know, food, because some people, they have deep freezes and stuff out on their back porches.
Yeah.
And you know, and finally, you know, one day they just found this guy who was supposedly living off the land. He'd been missing for like 27 years. He just up and took off. People do that.
Yep.
But I can't see spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on all this camping and survival equipment and just leaving it in the car if that was his intention.
Right. And he loved his family. He would have contacted them eventually, his friends or family, just like Barbara would, and so would the young Stacy earlier. But I'm going to hit the next one. But, you know, if anybody knows anything or has been around that area, look at your photos. You never know. Even if they could possibly see that he's in it, that would still, I think, would help bring them somewhat pinpoint an idea, you know, to keep looking in the area or whatever. Because these family members, they never stop. I would never stop. I know they're not. And they gave us permission to use this photo, and we thank you. And hopefully by circulating this stuff, it just keeps it going, you know, keeps it in the public's eye. But I picked another one where I stumbled one when I was going through tons and tons of different cases, you know, because there's so many that read, and it's quite depressing knowing this is happening, and so hundreds and hundreds, you know. But this one kind of stuck out to me because it was kind of strange, you know, because this is one of those cases where they're with people, but no one knows what happened, kind of thing. Now, from what I gathered on the net, you know, Mary, Lucille Brown Sloan, she was 53 years old. She was from Tucson, Arizona area. She had just recently lost her husband a few months prior to this campout. But Mary and several others headed to Mount Graham on September 3rd of 2015. And it's about 2 miles from Riggs Lake and about a quarter mile away from the Grandview Peak Road. And they basically set up their campsite off the side of this isolated mountain forest access road. Now, there was a group of 8 of them, and for whatever reason, they chose to camp on the side of this forestry road instead of a designated campground. And from what I read online, there are at least 5 campgrounds somewhat near that area, and that section they were in was on this forestry service road that has, like, you know, lots of switchbacks. And well, the photo I'm showing, it's not like the exact area of where they are, but it's like the mountain area. But from what I was reading, you know, it's a lot of switchbacks, and it's a lot of twists and bends, and and it's situated right off of a steep cliff. But we're talking about a forestry road. A forestry road is not like a paved road or a nice maintained gravel road. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. So, and I guess it's a good 30 miles or whatever all the way up to that spot from a certain, way down. So these people had to have known the area or have been there before or something. But several people in the group, I guess, have camped up together several times a year. So this spot could have been a place they stumbled upon and liked. Or maybe, they just wanted to avoid the campground, and not pay a camping fee or whatever. Who knows? I don't know why they chose this place. They just, chose this. But the group set up their campsite and, they were enjoying one each other's company and whatever. And it was said somewhere around 8:30 p.m. is when everyone decided that they were going to retire for the evening. Well, upon arising the next morning, Mary was nowhere in sight. Her tent, from what people were saying, looked like she never slept in it. All her belongings were in there, her cell phone, her purse, her bag, her sleeping bag or whatever was still rolled up. And they were all just sitting inside the tent, but there was no Mary. So the group of people began hollering out, looking for her, obviously. But they had no luck. So after a while, someone in the group contacted a forestry officer, and they were asking for help. So on September 4th, the Graham County Sheriff's SAR, along with a few other counties, began to do a ground search for Mary. And day turned into night, and there was still no trace of her. Several more volunteers started to join in to the search, as well, as the days were going on, as well as, dogs. And they searched up the road, they went to the woods, they were going along the cliff edges, they were going everywhere. And they just weren't finding anything. And on September 6th, they had, both ground and air searches conducting for Mary. And at one point, one of the dogs, they say, possibly hit on a section near a cliff. So a lot of people started, several of the SAR people who were professional in this were rappelling down the mountainside. And they even rappelled down one of the cadaver dogs, and they lowered them down. And they were rappelling down different sections of that. And they only could go down about 600 feet, but they still found no sign of her. And it was said that in that area of Mount Graham, that the cliffside goes down about 9,400 feet. And that there are several catch areas until the bottom. And they say that this is an area that is kind of unusual for hikers to be in. Because it's basically almost near inaccessible, not reachable, not something you'd use, It's
inaccessible?
Yeah. But no one knows where or what happened to Mary. They never could locate her. And the search ended up being called off after a week, which I hate when they do that. 10 days has passed, done. 5 days has passed, well, we're over. I just don't understand that, why they cut it off so quickly as they do. But, the group that she went with, she didn't know all of them that well, according to some news sites that I was reading. But that this group was known to do, they were known to do several campouts together throughout the years. But she knew, obviously she was friends with some of them. But some of the people, wonder why this group chose to camp off a service road isolated so far up on the mountain near a cliffside. Why not a designated campground that was well maintained? And someone mentioned on one of the sites under the comment sections, they were talking like, well, this area, there's no trailheads located there. And the closest ones near there are 2 miles away, and they're extremely hard trails.
Yeah.
Not like, where an average person like us would go, which we don't really do. Well, I do more than you. But they're saying it doesn't make sense because usually if you're going to hike an area, you'd camp as close as you can to the trailhead. Not miles away. Now, some people wonder if maybe she was possibly abducted. But being that it's so far up the mountain in an isolated area, it's unlikely someone came and picked her up by car. But that, there are cases of people who live up on the mountain kidnapping people. We know that. We've already mentioned it tonight. And one of the dogs did hit up on one of the areas, thinking that but that doesn't mean she wasn't there earlier with the group during the day, and walked past that. Doesn't mean she fell there. But really, there was really no scented trails leading away from her tent. Now, please don't really think there's foul play, because you can't, really, there's nothing, evidence that they can find that points to it. But the possibility is that before she retired to bed, maybe she stepped away to find a place to go to the bathroom, and she may have got disorientated and got lost, or, she could have fell and got injured, or ran into a predator. But there's other people who wonder if it's because, she lost her husband a few months earlier, that maybe she hurt herself on purpose, but the family don't believe that. And I'm not implying that by any means, because I don't know what happened, or these are things that are just talked about. But I'm just mentioning, just things I was reading. But when it comes to this case, either way, I wonder if maybe she decided she was just going to do a little stargazing, and then just ran into something. Because everybody else.
Did you say they were up on a cliff? Maybe she was doing some stargazing, or.
I just said that.
Like you said, walking. Well, I know that. Or like you said, walking to go to the bathroom, and she went the wrong direction and fell off the cliff.
Well, right, but it's hard to say. They just don't. Like I said, they went down all these edges over 600 feet and stuff, and they didn't find her. They didn't see her. And, I hope that someone in that area, because people do go hiking up there, way up there, are able to, possibly locate her for the family's sake. But she just disappeared, and like they said, they didn't really have a trail or scent that led anywhere from her tent to a certain section. And then the section where the dog possibly hit on something, her and the group of people could have been in that area earlier,
Right.
So it's hard to say. But obviously her family's still looking for her. They're still wanting to circulate this. They want it out there, and because maybe she got hurt, wandered off, and kept walking, or somebody took her, or something. But, Mary was 5 feet 3 inches tall. She was about 110 pounds at the last time people saw her. She was last seen wearing a green shirt and blue jeans and hiking boots. She had a small bracelet and a necklace that was gold with a thumbprint and ashes on. She was last seen in, I don't know if this is right, the Columbian area of Mount Graham. I don't know if that's the exact section or whatever. But if anybody has any information about her whereabouts, are encouraged to call the Graham County Sheriff's Office. But this is just another one where she was a bunch of people, and supposedly they all went to bed, but she just was gone, and she never made it into her tent.
But I know. I was just thinking that. What in the world happened to this girl that she didn't even make it to her tent? And what about, was there anything that you read about some of these people that, like the ones that she didn't know? Mm-hmm. Did they check those people out to find out exactly who they were? Their backgrounds? I don't know.
Well, I'm sure they obviously talked to them.
I'm sure they did. And if she did fall off the cliff, maybe just by some freak chance, she fell farther than that 600 feet.
Well, yeah, that's what I said, but it would take them forever to try to get there from the bottom, because they would have to hike for miles and miles, and it's so hard to even get to that section. And if they were hikers, it doesn't make sense why they would pick that section. That's what professional hikers were talking about, because the nearest trailhead was 2 miles away, but it was an extremely hard one. So some people were wondering, were they really up there to be hiking, or were they just up there just to camp and wanted to be off of a campground site?
Exactly. Maybe they were just out. Maybe they weren't hikers at all. Maybe they were just out there to, we're going to camp out for a couple of days and we're going to party. Some people do that. And they kind of go away from the regular campgrounds because who knows?
Because they don't want to get in trouble for whatever they may brought up. And we're not implying that there was drugs and alcohol involved in this, because we don't know. This is just what people are talking about. But obviously, the search was called off, but, family and friends and some volunteers are still keeping their eye out in the area when they're up there in that section. But nobody really knows what happened to her. It's another case where she was with a bunch of people and poof, she's gone. And they thought they might have hit on a scent, but they don't know. Like I said, they could have been in that section earlier in the day, But but nothing else. No, the dogs didn't pick her up,
True.
leaving anywhere.
Because this is not a case of hundreds of people, you know, hiking up this way, and the scent would be hard to pick up.
No, it was right there by the campsite.
Yeah.
She couldn't have gone too far, but you just don't know. And like I said, they said it's so far up there, away from everything. It's not like somebody would have saw a vehicle, you know?
Right.
And did her and somebody in the group get in the car and go down to get something, and then she just didn't come back? Who knows? We just don't know. But obviously I know they questioned the people in the group because that's their job. But they can't, if they have any type of thoughts or feelings towards something, they're not going to really put it out there to ruin the case either, because obviously it's still an open, some of these are still open cases or whatever. But it's just another one of those things where somebody's with a bunch of people and they're gone, you know? I don't know, you want to go ahead and do your next one?
Okay, this one, I decided to include this next one because I find it very, very interesting. It happened along the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, we don't have photos for this one that we could use,
no, we don't.
But we'll have it in links for you guys.
Now, while the Appalachian Trail technically is not a national park, I think it is a national forest. But on June 5th of 2014, a man walked into the, I hope I can get this right, Wallace Y Interpretive Center and asked the clerk if she would watch his car for him. He even offered her $200, and he said he would be gone 4 to 6 months. Now, this man would later be identified as Paur, P-A-U-R. Now, a few days later, some hikers came across this backpack that had been placed in the middle of this trail, and it was a narrow trail, so, you know, they had to go around it.
Well, yeah, the Appalachian Trail, it winds through, many miles and miles and miles, and it's not like
I think it's like 2,000 miles long or something like that, maybe more.
It's not paved. You're like literally walking like a deer
path. You're literally in the woods, yeah.
You're walking an animal's deer path, you know what I mean? It's still, it's very thin and small and rugged.
Yeah. And this backpack was found about a quarter of a mile from this center where this guy where he had gone into. Now, the backpack was turned over to the authorities, and inside of it they found hiking boots, a tent, a sleeping bag, a GPS system, a GoPro, and they found $3,000 in cash. There was a wallet in there with his ID and with the man's ID. I don't know why I'm getting tongue-tied. I apologize. Belonging to a 50-year-old construction worker named Paur. Now, Paul's girlfriend, they found her. She was interviewed. He was from Wisconsin. They found her up in Wisconsin. They interviewed her, and she stated that he had been having some mental health issues, and that he also talked about taking some time off away from his normal activities, and that he had also drawn $5,000 out of his bank account right before he had gone missing. Well, they did find out later that he had just quit his job and drained his bank account. Now, authorities did put out flyers along the trail asking for information about Paul's whereabouts, but they also contained a warning to the hikers not to approach him because he might be suicidal. Apparently, he had a history of mental health issues. Now, reports of sightings began to come in from hikers who claimed that they came across a man hiking by himself. Mm-hmm. And there were some reports that the man was not wearing hiking gear, but he was dressed in khaki shorts, t-shirt, and flip-flops. And some said he slept in a plastic bag. Some claimed to have talked to him and said that he had told them he planned to hike north to Mount Katahdin up in Maine, which was about 2,000 miles away. Now, authorities and hikers who encountered this man believed him to be Paul, And he's been spotted on different areas. This man has been spotted on different areas of the Appalachian Trail. And one man claimed to have shared his shelter with him. And he said that Paul read the New Testament and talked about finding God in the pathway of the mountains. There were other witnesses who said they spoke with him and he rambled on about religion. One guy said that he shared a campfire with him for several hours and they sat there and talked.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, authorities started searching all the places along the trail where witnesses claimed to have encountered him, and they interviewed hikers, park employees, campers, and anyone else, they came in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, supposedly on June 17th, he was spotted in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, about 100 miles away from where he started.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the witness said that he was barefoot, he was carrying a black duffel bag, and he had some pots. Not pots, plural.
Pots and pans, got you.
Pots and pans. He said that he talked to him for several hours. And this is one of the strangest cases connected
to the trail.
To the Appalachian Trail. And even today, there are reports of this strange barefoot man who keeps cropping up along the trail. And it's never in the same place. It's just different places along the trail. This strange guy, barefoot guy, just pops up, talks to people, and goes on his way. And he's become a mythical celebrity among the hiking community.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, could Paul have survived all of this time just living off the land, or from any handouts he could find? Or is this man even Paul?
Yeah, it could be tons of other people.
Yeah, it could be anybody. But people are convinced that it's Paul. Not everybody, but a lot are. And no one knows for sure what even happened to him, or even if it's possible that he could have even survived all this time. But to this day, Paul is still officially considered missing.
Right, and we're going to have a link for his photo and stuff that you guys can look at. We can't, we couldn't get the one where we could share or whatever. But here's the thing. On the Appalachian Trail, it comes into a lot of small towns. You can walk right off.
Right.
And there's little places where they allow people to sleep at. They have food stuff set up. And then you can go right back on the trail and keep going. We did talk about somebody else who had gotten lost on the Appalachian Trail and they never could find her again. But they eventually did end up finding her a mile or so off the trail. That Geraldine or whatever her name was, remember? But for the longest time, they couldn't find her. And she just poof disappeared. But she ended up only being so far off the trail. And she was close enough in the area where they kept searching. So I thought it was really weird why they couldn't find her. It was bizarre. But I don't know. As far as this person,
I don't know about this guy. Well, Paul was described as being 6'1", 230 pounds with brown hair and blue eyes. And there really wasn't a description of what he was wearing when he disappeared. But, this is a guy, like I said, even to this day, this strange man keeps popping up on the trail, talking to campers, sharing their shelter, sitting around their campfires, talking for hours. And they're all describing, when they ask for a description of the guy, they're pretty much just giving the same description.
Maybe he had a lot more gear than what they claim, because if he brought 5,000 and there was 3,000 in bag, maybe he put that bag on the trail to make people think that something happened to him, and then they would stop looking for him and leave him alone and just wanted to be left alone forever to live out there. And if he had enough other money to support himself and had other things with him, because we don't really know everything he had, but maybe he is living out somewhere fine.
Well, he left 3,000 in the backpack. He had 2,000 on him. By this time, that 2,000's got to be gone.
But unless he's doing odd and end jobs, if he's going in and out of different towns, but then they'd still say, hey, this is that guy. But then after so many years pass, a lot of times you forget about who's missing. So that to him, he could just be anybody else. He could have grew out his hair or anything. But it's hard to say. You just don't know. I'm sure they impounded his car and took it away. They didn't leave it at the place where it's left at, but This is just another case where you just don't know what happened to the person.
I know, and like I said, you know, they found out later that he did quit his job. He drained his bank account. He told his girlfriend he was going on, I think the word she used was sabbatical.
Yep, a sabbatical.
He told that woman at that center, you know, he was going to be gone 4 to 6 months. Well, he's more than exceeded that. And he has a history of mental health problems.
But just because somebody has a history of mental health problems doesn't mean they killed themselves, you know?
I'm not saying he killed himself. They thought that he might be suicidal. You know, I mean, you can have mental health problems and not be suicidal or even homicidal. He probably just got tired of the rat race and he's somewhere along the Appalachian Trail. Who knows what happened to this man? I just found this story interesting because, like I said, to this day, this strange man keeps popping up.
Yeah.
And some people believe that it is Paul. Other people, you know, they're not really sure. Or they, you know, don't give it a second thought because they're out there on this trail, you know, and I'm sure strange people pop up every once in a while out there on the trail.
Weird.
Yeah.
Definitely another strange thing. But like this one, you know, like, sorry we didn't have a photo. We wanted to, but we try to be respectful, whatever. But this is definitely just a weird one. I'll go into our next one so we don't run over too late for people. But, this next one I found happened in Alaska, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in Alaska. But there's a lot of stuff because somebody wants us to do the Trail of, was it the Trail of Tears? That where all those women were disappearing in Alaska. Remember? That's another topic.
The Trail of Tears is down in the southern states. That's where they moved the Indians.
Well, I'm thinking of the wrong word, but there is this thing where the tier of trails or something. It was something like that. Where that's happening in Alaska, where all these
triangle up there.
No, it's where all these women are being taken off this one stretch and killed.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. I can't think of the name of it. Now I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the name of it, but yeah.
It's something similar to that anyway. But I know we're being asked to do that. But this one is, get the photo up real quick. Valerie Sifsof. She was 43 years old. And her boyfriend, Elliot Freeberg, they decided they were going to do a little camping for a few days. So they went to Granite Creek Campground on the Kenai Peninsula, which is located 64 miles south of Anchorage along the Seaward Highway in the Chugach National Forest.
I think that's the Kenai.
Kenai. Well, sorry. We're already into 2 hours. I'm surprised we haven't messed up earlier.
I know. I'm sorry. You know, I don't like to do that, but when you said that, it kind of, where in the world is that? And it dawned on me what you were saying. Sorry.
Anyway, it's in the Chugach National Forest. But basically, the Granite Creek Campground is like this small loop campground that has about like 19 sites. And mainly you do a lot of tenting, but they also can, they have, it's access, some parts are accessible for like small RVs or whatever. But it was July 7th that Valerie and her boyfriend, they were camping there for the weekend or whatever. And from what it looks like in the photos, because the one with the DKNY hoodie, that's basically the last photo they took of her. And she seemed happy, they were grilling, having a good time or whatever. But sometime during that day into night, they had gotten into a tiff, an argument, and she left the campsite around midnight, which at that time in Alaska, it was still light out, because you know how they have that, eternal light-ish type of stuff during
midnight sun.
Yeah. But she left the campsite, and after some time had passed, I'm not sure how long, because it didn't really say, Elliot said that he went looking for her, but he couldn't locate her. Now, according to different sites, it was said that Elliot left the campground the next day, July 8th, around noon. And it wasn't until July 11th or the 12th, several days later, because she went missing on the 7th. She took off on the 7th, but on the 11th or the 12th, several days later, is when she was reported missing because she never returned home and failed to contact family or friends. Well, Elliot stated that she didn't take anything with her. She didn't take her cell phone, she didn't take her ID, her keys, or any of her belongings, and that she basically just left and never returned. So, what I think it's weird why it took so many days for him to say anything.
I think that's weird too.
But for 10 days, troopers, friends, and family and volunteers searched for Val without finding anything. And at which time, the troopers ended their search, but the family and friends and, volunteers, they continued searching on their own. And since there was no proof that there was a possible abduction or like homicide of her case, it wasn't really dealt like that of a criminal one, but more of just a missing person. So it was, handled different. But it was mentioned on a blog that after several weeks had passed, that other campers at the campsite during that time hadn't been contacted by the law enforcement, and that, one could have gotten information to what happened if they did talk to those guys. So the family started to contact these people who were camping there at the time themselves, because there's this thing where you pay $14 or whatever for each site or whatever. So obviously they got to find out who was staying there at that time. So when they were contacting these people, they were reaching out to them, and they said that a lot of people were kind of hesitant. They didn't really want to talk with them or with strangers. So the family asked them if you could at least contact the Alaska troopers and give them any information you might know. But a lot of people who go to Alaska are trying to stay away from the law, because you know how some people go up there to get away from everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so they don't want to talk. But, on other articles I was reading, there was troopers who were saying that they did speak to some of the other campers during that time, and that some of them were helpful, while other ones didn't want to talk to them at all. But in the fall of 2012, with all the family and volunteers and everybody who was still helping to try to keep this going on, looking for her, they did locate 2 clothing items that were found in the Granite Creek, which is right nearby the campsite areas. One that was actually similar to the sweatshirt that she was last seen wearing about a half a mile downstream from the campsite, and it was stuck in this log jam. And so at which point they started up the search again. The officers, SAR people, they started coming along, helping along with the friends and the family and the other volunteers. And but since her disappearance, many have conducted, they did, boat, they've done air, they've done foot, they even had trained dogs that were brought in. And many of them have their own theories and thoughts to why, this occurred. Some believe she might have walked away, maybe to the main road, possibly to hitch a ride out, which is a couple miles. Others think that maybe she'd been abducted by somebody in the area, in the camp area, or whatever. Yeah. Or she got lost, injured, or attacked while she went for her walk. Now, I can't say one way or the other because I wasn't there, but just to know that it's just strange that another person just vanishes again. You know what I mean?
Well, on the Kenai Peninsula, they have don't they have polar bears there? I know they have brown bears.
Grizzly bears.
Grizzly bears, she and they're not shy about coming into camp areas, or let alone into towns and villages. One of them could have grabbed her.
Here's the thing is, I don't understand why, if she went missing on the 7th, obviously had cell phones there, maybe you couldn't get service there, and maybe it took them a while to get back to town. Nobody heard from anything, and then I just don't know why it took them to the 11th or the 12th to contact officials.
I know, because that's 4 days. She goes missing.
On the 7th.
On the 7th. He just up and left on the 8th.
I don't know if he just
she wasn't back yet.
I can't say he just up and left. He left in the afternoon. Maybe he had to go back. But I wouldn't have left my significant other in the wilderness. Sorry.
And then 4 days later, she was reported as missing.
Yeah, it made me...
It just doesn't seem right.
Right, and I'm not saying that he harmed her, but maybe in that area there's no cell service that would even work, so it took them days to get back to where they're from, right? But I don't think I would have...
If you ever watch that show, Alaska State Troopers, there's very few of them out there, too. You have to go a long way to even run into one of those guys.
Yes, I understand. You're right. Because there's more land than people. But
right.
But her family, her friends, and volunteers continue to search and go up there for different seasons looking for her, obviously. But I'm saying, this is just my personal thought for me, and I'm not trying to attack anybody, but I think this is something, this is a case that should be talked about too. But I just find it strange. I would, even if you got in a fight or whatever, and just because she got in a fight doesn't mean she ran off to hurt herself. When you get an argument, you need space for a second. So she probably walked away for a second and was going to come back, but something happened. Obviously, something happened. Either they got in a fight.
Right, because she left her ID, she left her cell phone.
Everything.
She probably just, if they got into an argument, she walked off planning on coming back.
Right,
and
just
she
cool down.
Didn't.
And it was still light out, even though it's midnight. It was still light out there. But
right.
She could have started hanging out with somebody else in the campsite ground, because there were several. What did I say? How many was there? 18, or what did I say was there? How many did I go? How many campsites I said? 19 campsites there. So obviously there was other people camping there, because it was mentioned by family and officers or whatever. Maybe she sat and started conversing with them for a while or whatever, or maybe she did walk to the road to hitch a ride out of there to get back to town or whatever. But they did find strips of items of clothing. I don't know if it was a full clothing item or a strip of item of clothing that could have been hers. But they said that one of the items had her DNA on it. So they are coming back, and they've been searching the log jams during the different seasons when the water goes down and everything else. They're still tracking it, but this is another person who just disappeared. But obviously there were people there. They had to have heard something or saw something at some point. Do you know what I mean? But the fact that the people who usually are up in Alaska, and I'm not saying everybody, because I love Alaska and we love, and you know what I mean? But there are some people who go to certain remote areas because they're tired of society and they don't like officers and they don't want to deal with that or whatever else too. But, she was born November 23rd of 1968. She's 5'5", and somewhere between 120 and 150 pounds at the time since she went missing. She had black hair, brown eyes, and was last seen her black DKNY hood sweatshirt, blue sweatpants, black calf, high boots, and sunglasses on her head. She was a member of the Inupiaq, sorry if I said that wrong, Inupiaq tribe in Alaska. They do have a $27,000 reward for anyone that can give any information that's leading to a safe recovery of her, or the arrest or conviction of persons responsible for her disappearance. But this is another one where there are people around. It's still light out. Obviously they're going to hear them fighting a little bit, but she just disappeared again. She's around, and I don't think she walked off into the wilderness, because obviously she's from Alaska. You know better. You know your environment. You know what's around.
She's a member. She's a member of a tribe up there, so she knows better than to do that. And she probably knew at least a certain amount of survival skills.
Well, a lot of people, you know what I mean. But the thing is, this is another one where it's strange. But I do, the thing that kind of struck me odd is why it took them several days to make contact. Why did he make contact? Maybe it was because of where he was at, how long it took him to get home. They have no cell service, so by the time it took them a few days to get to where they needed to be in order to contact for help. I just don't know. That's the part I thought was odd. But I'm not saying he hurt her.
Well, no, we're not saying that, but there is a lot of land up there, and it probably took him a while to even get anywhere where he could contact anybody, but I can't see it taking 4 days.
Yeah, I just don't, maybe he thought, but I don't think why he would think, oh, she'll come back on her own, and then we'll hear from her. Because, I mean, that's a bit of ways away from a town and stuff, too, though. And I'm going to have in the links where you guys can see the campsite. You can see what it looks like. You can see the environment around it. You can see the Granite Creek and what it looks like. There's just some photos we couldn't share because people didn't give us permission or whatever. But, I mean, it's all in the links so that you guys can see all the different photos and the different information. The newspaper articles we came across, too, that you guys can read in far more greater detail. But this is just another one of those cases where they were around with people, and then, poof, they're gone again. But nobody really knows. You couldn't track anything down. And they did find some items, but they weren't 100% sure if it was even her items, you know? They said it was similar to. But anyway,
Right.
But I don't know. Why don't... We're going to continue to do more of these shows because this is something that's always asked for. And we might go beyond just national state parks and forests. We might start doing stuff in other countries too, because there's other countries where people are just vanishing in their woods and forests and weird things like that. It's happening kind of like all over the place, but we might end up doing some in cities and towns too, just because of all the stuff that we're reading. We'll just put them under other type of show topics, like missing cases or something. But why don't you go ahead and let people know what we're doing in our next show?
Okie dokie. First of all, I want to thank our mods, Ghost Call Radio Network, Nell, Doppel.
Ghost Call Radio.
Ghost Call Radio.
Richard.
Did I say that?
Yeah, Richard was here for a little bit.
Richard was in there. Hi, Richard. And everyone who came in to listen to us. I want to thank Raven for a good show. I'm getting tongue-tied. Join us next time. We're going to do a viewer's request. Join us on the 21st, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. Eastern. We are going to do the dark side of organ harvesting. Well, this is a viewer's request.
Harvesting organs, like the dark side of hospitals and morgues and stuff, where they,
exactly,
you know, they do stuff that they shouldn't be doing.
That's true. And I want to thank everyone for coming. Please subscribe to us, give us a like, and please share us with others on any social media you may be a part of.
Right. Thank you guys all for coming. If you guys want to get show reminders, you can always click here on our YouTube next to Spooky and Raven, and you can subscribe. Or you can go to our Facebook page, Anything But Ordinary, and, you know, like it. Make sure you follow it so that you'll see on your newsfeed our upcoming show topics. You can also contact us there, or, you know, suggest show topic ideas, or, you know, share with us your own personal encounters and stuff if you want to come on and share with us.
Exactly.
Share live, you know, your own stuff with the paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, or whatever. But you can also email us at anythingbutordinary@live.com. We hope you guys all have a safe and awesome week. And we'll see you again next time and around the internet. Good night, everybody.
Good night.